Hello, chess friends, and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel, and welcome to the Magnus Carlsen Invitational Tournament in 2021. We're now in the day 3, and from the round 11, the most interesting game was the game between Alireza Firouzja and Wesley. Wesley yesterday played such a beautiful game. I've covered that game against Levon Aronian. Please check it out if you haven't watched it. It's really something worth to see. Now he's playing with the black pieces against Alireza. Alireza is playing warm, cold. Alireza has to still find his grip in this tournament. He's playing sometimes bad. He's playing really sharp in some other games. So it's what, in my opinion, really the most interesting match from the round 11. Let's check out now what happened. I think it was also a very cool game here played by both sides. So here Alireza opened with the move d4. Wesley responds with knight to f6, knight to f3, d5, and now after bishop to f4, Alireza goes into the London system. Recently Alireza has played the London system very often. I think he's familiar with these great lines of these openings. And here Wesley plays immediately c5. I think a London system player doesn't like this early c5 move because of course we're attacking the dark squares. In the game Alireza played the calm e3, and now comes knight to c6, knight to d2, and now queen to b6. This is a very popular line also for black. Black is attacking now two pawns, attacking the pawn on d4 and also the pawn on b2. Here Alireza has to take, I think, d takes c5 is the most accurate way, and the Wesley could have maybe taken here the pawn on c5, but then you get c4 or maybe knight to b3, and after knight to b3 I think white is still controlling the dark squares. First of all, we're controlling the d4 square, but we're also controlling the e5 square, and that's why I don't think that taking out the pawn on c5 is such a great idea. Here Wesley I think it takes the correct pawn, takes actually a poison pawn. It's the pawn on b2. From this game we can, from this point on, I think we can notice that the pawn structure is asymmetrical. Really dynamics can happen, and it's really wild game because first of all the queen is on a natural square. The queen can get the danger, the queen can get attacked by the rook's activity, and now we can also search for e4 ideas here from white's perspective. What black I think needs to do now is to regroup. Regrouping here is very important for black. Black needs to fast develop his minor pieces, secure the king by castling, and then trying to get best out of it, because the good thing for black is here that black has, I think, a much healthier pawn structure. So here Alireza plays rook to b1, attacking the queen. If you take out the pawn here on a2, it's not so good, I think, because you get bishop to b5, and the bishop to b5 move is actually one of the most natural moves in the London system. Usually in the London we're always, at least I think in 90% of this games, we're battling for the e5 square, and now maybe black continue with the move a6, but we can simply take bishop takes c6, b takes c6, and now after castling again we're having this powerful control on dark squares. e5 is not a possibility. e6, if you play, then you still have dark square problems. d6 is weak, e5 is weak, the queen can get endangered with rook to a1, rook to b6. c4 is even here a possibility. I think from this point on white would have a pleasant game. So that's why after the move rook to b1, Wesley goes queen to c3, threatens also the move knight to e4, continuing the pressure against the knight, against the pinned knight on d2. Here Alireza goes again with bishop to b5, which is perfectly fine, and now we have e6. That's what I loved here about Wesley game. Again, he could have maybe taken the pawn, but then again the game becomes more and more complicated. The queen could be endangered, so that's why I like this move. e6, normal development, and then it's actually a great way to play actually chess, because here Wesley shows, I think, also sort of a beginner's chess lesson, because he's developing first his minor pieces. He knows that the c5 pawn, and maybe here even the c2 pawn, and maybe even the a2 pawn are long-term weaknesses. They cannot be improved because these are isolated pawns, these are weak pawns. First development, securing the king, and then we'll strike back and attack, of course, these weaknesses. So here in the game, Carlsen played Alireza. Here also bishop to e7. Again, here Wesley is not rushing into complications. And here Alireza plays an outstanding move, e4, and again Wesley plays a calm move. He plays simply Carlsen. If you take here knight takes e4, it's really not good. Here Alireza played prepared an outstanding attack. After the move knight to e4, if you play this, then you get bishop to c6 again, then b takes c6, knight takes e4, d takes e4, and now bishop to d6. This would be a monster move, because you see how important it is in chess to castle, to secure the king, because actually you cannot take out the knight. If you take out the knight here with e takes f3, then we'll simply take out the bishop. Bishop takes e7, and here the queen has to retreat, because if you take out, then we play simply queen to d6. Again, you have to put your king on the light square, and we will have then queen to c6 followed with queen to a8. Really wild stuff what Alireza has prepared here. I still think that it was sort of a homemade preparation here by Alireza. You see how dangerous it can be when you don't secure the king by Carlsen. So here Wesley, so as I said, played a calm move. Carlsen, still the c5 is weak, still as we said the c2 is weak, and also the a2 pawn is a weakness. So here e5. Now finally Alireza has the opportunity to grab some space. We have now this advanced pawn. Many times you can see maybe in the French defense, Karjakin, also like in this London system, where we're building simply our space advantage with this advanced pawn on e5, and obviously we're going to now, from white perspective at least, to attack the king side, because many pieces are directed there, and we have also this advanced pawn on this side of the board, so that's actually the area that we're attacking. So if you try here knight to g4 to counter attack against the pawn, again it's not so good. Again comes the same idea, bishop to c6, b takes c6. That's actually the main positional threat here of white. Then h3, here you have to play bishop knight to h6, and we have now bishop to h6. We would simply weaken the pawn structure too much. Then knight to b3, protecting our pawn. Even if you take here, I think we can even take, and still white is black is continuing the game with the bad bishop. You only have this diagonal, this bishop is blocked out by its own pawns, and I think we could then sneak in with our queen attacking the h6 pawn. So it's a bad game again for black. So here after the move e5, Wesley so goes knight to d7. We have knight to b3, and now queen to b4. Again, Wesley is playing a calm game. First attacks the bishop on b5, which is perfectly fine. Knight to d4, and now knight takes d4, knight takes d4, and here finally queen takes c5. You see how many tempi Wesley so played in order to take out the pawn. It's really a great lesson, I think, by the top grandmaster Wesley So, how he first develops his minor pieces, he regrouped, and now he took the pawn. The evolution is still about equal, but I would always rather be black here, because still this c2 pawn is a weakness, a2 is a weakness. So what black needs to do now is to slow down the pace of the game a little bit, to not complicate things, maybe even trade off more pieces, because it's obvious still that Alireza has a dangerous attack here with ideas maybe something like queen to g4, bishop to h6, rook to b3, rook to g3. The activity of white pieces is still perfectly fine. We can play even bishop to d3, then you cannot take out the knight, then you get bishop to h7 and similar stuff. So the activity of white pieces is perfectly fine. So when you're giving up the pawn, at least you have to have some kind of a compensation. I think Alireza has it here, but still, as I said, this is Wesley So. He showed in this tournament that he's played outstanding chess. Here rook to e1 played by Alireza, applying this principle of the last piece, activating the last piece into the game. Sometimes when you don't know what to do in chess, activate the last piece. So it's perfectly fine. Rook to e1 with ideas maybe again rook to e3, rook to g3, and similar stuff. So here a6, we have bishop to d3. We have pointed this out. Queen to d4 is not a possibility. You get discovered. Check here, bishop to h7, and you lose the queen. g6, and now Alireza has to react. Knight to f3, and now b5. Wesley So, we can agree, I think, has better pawn structure. The c2 is still a long-term weakness. Is still, of course, Wesley is still up a pawn here in the game. h4 played by Alireza, great move. We want to split the pawn structure in front of the king, getting use of our bishop's activity on the king side. These bishops are very dangerous. Bishop to b7, and now knight to g5. And here Wesley plays an outstanding move. It's really hard to find. He plays simply bishop to g5, although probably the better way is to play queen to d4, attacking the bishop. But of course it's rapid. You have to find really this great moves immediately. I even like this move here. Bishop takes g5, although you have this dark square problems, and it was a risky idea by Wesley so to give up the main protector of dark squares is of course the dark square bishop. Still, it's not so easy now to attack, because what you want to do now from white's perspective is to maneuver the bishop somehow, getting the queen maybe to f4 and then sneak in with the queen, then play something like bishop to g5 again, bishop to h6, f takes e takes f6, and then maybe deliver checkmate. But still, black can defend this position with maybe f6 idea, then protect somehow maybe the 7th rank with the rook. So there are defensive ideas, but as I said, it was still a risky idea by Wesley so to give up the dark square bishop. The evaluation is better for black, even after this risky trades of pieces. We have now d4 played by Wesley so. He liberates of course his long diagonal. He has to activate now his bishop, and now here comes f4. This wasn't the best of moves by Alireza. A better idea, of course, the e5 is hanging. A better idea is here to move bishop to d2 actually, because if you take knight takes e5, then you get bishop to b4, and then I think Alireza would gain an extra tempo, would play simply queen to e2, protect this pawn, and then maybe trying further push the pawn on h5 and weaken the pawn structure in front of the king, and then maybe get use of the dark squares in the position. So as we said, here f4 not the best of moves. Here queen to c6, which was now I think the first inaccuracy by Wesley so. Queen to c6 is not so good because you're getting in front of your bishop, and actually the best way here for Alireza would have been the move bishop to e4. This would be, I think, a simplified line for Alireza, and that's actually what I meant with the title. Sometimes we fall in love into your bishop pair. I had my trouble sometimes when I played with the bishop pair against the bishop and the knight, and then what you want to do is simply hang on to your bishop pair. You want to stay with your bishops, but sometimes it's even a good choice to trade off the bishops. That's actually sometimes a good idea, but as I said, sometimes we simply fall in love with our bishops. We don't want to give up our bishop no matter what, and that's actually what Alireza should have done here. Bishop to e4 would lead now into a drawish line. Queen to b6, probably bishop to b7, now d3. That's sort of a suggested line by the engine. Then king to h1 taking, queen to d3, and now knight to c5, and maybe this knight to e4 would lead now into a drawish line with knight takes g5 or similar stuff. I think Wesley so would find ways to defend this position. But after the move queen to c6, Alireza is falling in love with his bishop pair, plays queen to g4, and now it gives Wesley so the opportunity to counterattack h5. And you see now this bishop on g5 is actually trapped. Of course, still black has here the dark square problems, but you cannot exploit them anymore because the bishop is locked. In order to attack the dark squares, you have to include also the queen into the game, and that's actually not possible anymore, because after queen to g3, here Wesley so plays simply knight to c5, attacks the bishop, and he has now, I think, from this point on, a very comfortable game. So after the move knight to c5, here bishop to f6 was played by Alireza. He's trying still to attack the dark squares, but now king to h7 prevents some ideas. Queen to g5, queen to h6. Here in the game, bishop to f1. Again, Alireza is trying to hang on to this bishop. Now Wesley so has the opportunity to play the fork, knight to e4, and Alireza goes all in with rook to e4, queen to e4, and now rook to e1. It's a much better game now for Wesley. So queen to c2, it's actually a lost game here for Alireza, but bishop to d3, and here queen to a2 was played by Wesley. So not the best of moves. Queen to c3, pinning a little bit further this bishop would be a better idea. Still, he has a better continuation, of course, but the queen to a2 is also perfectly fine. Now rook to e2, queen to a1, we have king to h2, and now queen to d1, attacking rook to e1, rook to d2, rook to e2, again attacking the queen. And here, after the move queen to d1, rook to e1, Wesley so played queen to d2, played the perpetual, and the game ended in a draw. Although here Wesley so should have probably played queen to g4 after something like queen takes g4, h takes g4. I think this is still completely winning here for black. Black has here 2 extra pawns, although you have to take care of your position here on the king side. But as I said, here Wesley so didn't want to complicate things, went into a 3 times repetition, and the game, as I said, ended in a draw. I think this was a great game. It showed some strategical elements, how you should first secure the king, and also showed the psychological problems of the bishop pair. Sometimes when we have the bishop pair, we're trying to hang on to it. I think Alireza made several inaccuracies by playing on simply on his active bishop pair. Wesley so punished this position very easily, and I think he gave away here his win. But still, as we said, Wesley so is still great in this tournament. He'll make it to the quarterfinal stage for sure, and we'll see now what will happen in the next couple of games. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. If you want to see more games from this tournament, check out my previous analyzed games by Magnus Carlsen, Wesley so and so on. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.